Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I've got a really interesting video this week. I have found a huge antique sale that's going on locally here about 30 minutes or so from the farm, and I have met the owner and proprietor of this land and of this property and of this historical preservationist of Georgia history, buildings and antiques. And his name's Greg Wyatt, and he's going to spend some time with us and show us all around and show us what's here on the property and tell us a little bit of history about this part of Georgia right here. So it's going to be a really interesting video, and he's going to share a lot of knowledge with us. So let's get Greg over here.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Broughton Station in Broughton, Georgia. Our address is 4127 Broughton Road, Newborn, Georgia. But again, welcome to Broughton Station. This community was founded right after the Civil War, or right during that time of the Civil War, by John W. Broughton from Madison, Georgia, which is only probably 8 or 9 miles from here. And originally this was a stagecoach stop. There was a 5-room hotel, which was across the little dirt road here behind us, or actually in front of me. The 5-room hotel, again, was active for probably 70 years. This was a stagecoach stop. There was later on, the railroad came through, and this was a thriving community. It had several Mercantile stores. It had a cotton gin. It had lots of different areas that you could come to and bring your cotton and get weighed at the old scale shack here. And then this is one of the Mercantiles that's still standing, built probably late 1800s. And this building, we saved this building. It was actually sitting on the road in front of me, which was dirt at that time. And it was right on the road. And we actually lifted this building up, put I-beams under it, and the guys moved it back about 30 feet. But this old great building is built out of mostly heart pine material and will last hopefully another several generations, if not another 100 years. But that kind of gives you a little history of Broughton. We are having a huge antique show this coming weekend, starting tomorrow, Thursday, May the 4th, through the 6th. On Saturday, we'd love to have you guys come out. We're going to have live bluegrass music, rock and roll. We've got the Great Zim Skillet with Great Barbecue. They're going to be here. But all the buildings, we have 11 buildings full. We're going to have all those open, and then we have about 30 vendors here selling their great antiques. So come on in. Welcome to Broughton Station. This would be your Walmart. I'm not a big Walmart fan, but this would be your old Walmart. You would have anything here from bulk, flour, meal, anything that you would use on a day-to-day basis. And you would have shoes, overalls, anything that you would need would be in this old, or any of your old type general mercantile buildings. Of course, we're addicted to history, so that's kind of how we ended up in this business. We've saved about 20 buildings, and we're absolutely addicted to it. And we tried to set this old country store up like you would have seen it if you would have walked in one in the 1920s. Of course, the old Pepsi carrier that you'd have your bottles in, probably from the 1930s. But you would have had showcases, somewhat set up like we have here, and you could have been able to buy, of course, guns and ammo as well. And what's really funny to me is I've had several old timers tell me that they couldn't afford a box of shotgun shells, but all of these old Mercantiles would sell one shell at a time. So they would go and buy 2 or 3 shells, and hopefully they would kill something to put on the table that night. But all your old cash registers, these would have, of course, we have several in here and they all work, but those are the old type cash registers that you would actually use in the old days. And let's hope it works when $96.61. That would have been a huge purchase in the early 1900s. You would have had your planters jars full of, they called them wafers or crackers, not necessarily cookies. And this was another cash register type that you would have had the person's name on there, and you would have had a weekly, or actually a monthly. You paid monthly, or sometimes you may have paid after your crops came in. A lot of times people would borrow money and have an account in an old mercantile like this, and they didn't pay it until the crops were harvested. Lots of different pottery. You would see pottery in these type mercantiles as well. Your different hats, and as I said earlier, you'd have clothes and overalls, and then this piece here, you'd come in and say, I'd want a half a pound or a pound of coffee, and they'd grind your coffee for you and weigh your cheeses. And so again, anything that you would need would be in one of these old mercantiles, and if they didn't have it, they would order it for you.
And everything in here is for sale.
Everything in here is for sale, but one or two items that my grandmother gave me, and those are put up so most people wouldn't see them. But everything else you see in this video and all these buildings is for sale. And as I said earlier, we'll have, for our show starting tomorrow, May the 4th, we'll have over 30 vendors, and everything's for sale. And they bring a lot of great treasures from out of barns and buildings that they've been gathering up for quite some time.
Now, would these walls be original to this building? This roof original to this building?
The walls and roof is beadboard, and they are original to the building. The floor is original to the building. And this tin, David, that you see, this is where the potbelly stove would have been. You can see the hole going through the roof, and we're going to put that back in. The shelves are original. Some were taken out. They had actually added some offices where that Coke button is and had a bathroom in here. So we took all of that out, and it's back original to what it was. But it's amazing that it was able to withstand the last 130 or 140 years and still be in the condition it is. We actually had to replace a lot of the old beams underneath, and as I said earlier, hopefully she'll get a few more generations out of her.
Now, these doors are incredible right here. They're what, 10 feet tall?
They're 9 feet tall. You're very close, and they're great old doors. They actually came off the square in Monticello, Georgia. You can see the old Chamber of Commerce sticker on there from the 1950s. I found these in an old barn, and the doors that were on this store, they were actually in terrible condition, falling apart. This whole front was rotting, and we salvaged these and put them on the store. So, train station, train depot, that was Shadydale, and we moved it about 2 years ago. We had to take the roof off to be able to get under the power lines. Adrian Bishop, great house mover, moved it for us. We put it in. We're not through. We put the roof back on it, but this building was probably built in the late 1800s, but more than likely early 1900s. We're going to have the old ramps around the depot like you would have seen in the older days, but this depot, the same thing, was built out of heart pine. Just a great building. And what we've done, this is part of our antique show as well. We have it set up with, you just about name it, we have it. And the kitchen sink, of course. You behind David here, there's several kitchen sinks. We sell architectural items, old country doors, anything that would have been in old industrial buildings. We have syrup kettles, you name it. If we don't have it, we can find it for you. But this old depot, we probably got another year or two before we have it restored the way we would like it. But just imagine, this area was the freight area. This is where all the freight would have been stored, and the farmers would come in and pick up what they needed or pick up what they had ordered. It's just a great old building. We're very fortunate to be able to save this building and be able to use it for our antique shows and And here at Broughton, we just continue to try to save history and bring to Broughton Station. Now here, as you walk down these steps, this is the passenger area. This is where your passengers would have come in and would have gotten their ticket and from the ticket master. And of course, you can see the windows here. This would have been facing the railroad track, and the ticket master or whomever would be there to see when the train is coming in and letting the passengers know and get ready. Of course, here we still have some work to do in this building as well, but you can see we have tons of vintage Christmas from the early 1900s up through the mid 1900s, and we enjoy saving history. That's what we enjoy doing. And history can be buildings, property, land, or items. And as you can see, we just have a passion for saving anything that could be used in the future. And today we see this coming back. We see the art of hand making quilts and blacksmithing and the old butcher shops, and we see all of that starting to come back some. So and we're just addicted and happy that we are seeing that come back. Okay, we're outside of the train depot that here at Broughton Station now that we moved from Shadydale, and you can see we've got to put a door on here and some ramps, and we'll have it back set up like it was in the late 1800s, early 1900s. This yellow building with the red door, this is actually an old kitchen that came off a 1836 house in Monticello, Georgia. And we took the house apart, we moved it in pieces, and we were able to incorporate those pieces into new homes. We saved this part of the house, which is, as I said, 1836. This was the kitchen it was attached to the house by a breezeway. And they'd always have that little breezeway, that roof part that they could detach relatively quickly in case there was a fire in the kitchen, because that's where, of course, the fires would start. Most of the time was in the kitchen. But this is a great old building. And one little bit of history about this kitchen in this house that came from Monticello. It was built by the Bentons, and the second oldest garden club, not in the state, but in the nation, was started in this house in Monticello, Georgia. The second oldest garden club. The oldest garden club in the nation was started in Athens, Georgia. So that gives you a little bit of history. So there's so much history. There again, we're talking about this, and that's what we really enjoy, saving history for future generations.
Now, why in yesteryear was the kitchen built separately from the house? Other than fire, was it a heat issue to keep the heat in the house down? And when guests are in the house, there's not a lot of cooking and commotion going. What was the principle behind that?
Exactly, all of the above. To keep, if the kitchen were to catch on fire, they could detach it from the roof line of the main house relatively easy, and also to keep the heat down in the house. So that's exactly right. So
now I heard an old wives' tale, and it may not be a wives' tale, it may be true, was that when the kitchen help would take the food from the kitchen to the main house to serve the guests, when they would step outside, the dogs would start barking, and it would interrupt the people in the house. And so what the cook started doing is started cooking up little dollops of bread, and when they would walk outside, they would throw the little dollops of bread down to the dogs to keep them quiet, and that's where hush puppies came from.
But you're exactly right. That's where I've always heard, whether it's a wives' tale or not, but I've always heard that's where, the dogs, they'd throw that little piece of meal or flour to the dogs and hush puppies. So, and I'm glad they did. They're delicious.
They are.
Okay, folks, this paved road, of course, was dirt. There was another dirt road that intersected behind the railroad tracks here. And this, just imagine, 100 years ago, it was all buggy and horses. I mean, just amazing what history and time, who would have ever thought we'd be riding in planes and driving cars. As you can see, the chimney that's on the other side of this mulberry tree, which the frost took care of our mulberries this year. But that chimney, that's the remnants of the 5-room hotel that was built here during the stagecoach days. Lots of great history. You can hear the chimes on the front porch now. This is another structure that we moved. It was actually built in 1812. And there again, it is a kitchen. It is a kitchen. It was built separate from the house. That house was in Monticello, Jasper County, at Clay Road and Highway 16. And it was an old home, a tavern or saloon, and it was very close to the Ogmulgee River. And we saved that structure, and we moved the kitchen here, and now this is, we call it our little gas station. Of course, the 1950s gas pump here, but it's a great old building. One thing that we really like about this location is the trees. These are huge post oaks, and you can see the dead vines, or looks like vines on the limbs. Those are ferns, and they're called resurrection ferns. And the reason resurrection, as soon as a little water falls on those ferns, their beautiful green foliage appears and lasts about 2 days. And when it's dry, they turn back just as brown as can be.
And that's something I never heard that.
They're beautiful, beautiful. Across the dirt road here, of course, that's still dirt, is the scale house. That's where the wagons would come and weigh the cotton or seed, feed, whatever would need to be weighed. But mostly was for cotton, and you'd have big wagons, big cargo wagons come in loaded with cotton, and they would weigh the cotton, and then it would go to the cotton gin, which was very close to this location as well. But just imagine if these trees could talk. What histories would we learn? Some not so good, some really good. Those are some great post oaks, beautiful trees. We had a tire swing. You can see the remnants of the rope that's hanging there, and kids loved it. We've got to get that put back up. Across the dirt road where Jordan is walking is a new country store. We built that store a year ago, and we wanted it to blend in and look like it has been here for 100 years, and it will eventually. We cut the cedar post, or a friend of mine actually cut those cedar posts, and we brought those in, and the inside is looks just like an old store. We have this is our King Edward Cigar Amphitheater. This is where and Rick Holder from Monroe named it that. He will be here Saturday playing bluegrass music under the Coca-Cola sign, and we'll have a couple other bands here playing some old rock and roll and great country music. So we'd love to have you come. Folks, ignore that old box spring on the front porch. That's not going to be in the sale. However, if you'd like to have it, we'll give it to you. But this old store, it's a work in progress still. It's a work in progress. We've got several guys in here working, and then several guys in here putting up, setting up their booths. And again, we finally got this building wired up, but we've still got a lot of things to do and finish up. But these are old country store counters and showcases on top, and we just wanted everything to look like it did when you walked in the 1920s or 30s. This is an old blacksmith working table that came out of a blacksmith in Covington, actually on the Burge family property plantation area. And this old trunk, it says, "Please ask me about my history," was early 1700s handmade trunk. A great piece of history. Walking out from the old or the new country store, you can see the gas pump. A lot of times those gravity-fed gas pumps were on the front porch of the old store or just outside of the store on the ground. If you pan to the right, you can see the metal building with the window that has no glass panes in it. That was a blacksmith shop that was moved from Rutledge. We saved that building last year and just finished it up actually yesterday.
This is a 19-teens, 20s blacksmith shop that we moved from Broughton, Georgia. We took it apart board by board and moved it to Broughton Station and put it back up. And hopefully our next show in December, we will have the famous Buster Grubbs here making some items from some great old steel. So it's a good building. We're fortunate to be able to save it.
We're walking back across the dirt road. This dirt road went straight across Highway 142. You can see a gap through those woods there, and went back around and went to Farah, Georgia, Kelly, Georgia, Shadydale, Monticello, and it was a stagecoach route.
Folks, the stagecoach stop. Of course, John W. Broughton built this town from Madison, Georgia. He was from Madison. This was kind of a high elevation area of Jasper County. Morgan County is just on the other side of the railroad track, which at one time Morgan County stopped at the Little River, which Jasper went to the Little River, which is a couple miles from here. This area, the stagecoach stop, was on the Seven Islands Road or stagecoach route. And what I was told, this route was the old Indian trails. And actually, this stagecoach or stage went from the Carolinas, maybe even farther. Of course, it connected from different areas a lot farther, but came through Jasper County onto the Ocmulgee River all the way to the Mississippi. So it was a Seven Islands trail, and you'll see a lot of areas in different counties in the state of Georgia and other counties that the road is named Seven Islands. And that was an old Indian name, from my understanding. I may have some of this a little, could be a little more added, a little taken away. But that gives you an idea of the age of this stagecoach that came through here, this old wagon train, wagon trail. And before then it was Indian trail. So this area has so much rich history, and we have actually found some old Civil War relics here, Civil War bullets. And one thing I did mention earlier, this route was the route that Sherman marched from Atlanta to the sea, burning everything. Sherman was with this group of troops that came through Broughton, that went through Farah, Kelly, and Shadydale. Then Sherman himself, I think, went to Madison as well. But Sherman was with this division, and I can't remember if it's the 12th or the 14th division, but a lot of his generals stayed in Farah at the Farah home. And Farah is spelled, as you can see, that old Farah sign was found in a barn in Farah, and that sign is from the 1930s or early 1940s. Never was hung on the old store. But Sherman's generals stayed in the Farah home. They stayed in a log home in Kelly. They stayed in the Lancaster home in between Kelly and Shadydale, and they stayed in the Whitfield Hotel, which was a huge building. Whitfield was the largest landowner in Jasper County, and I know of no Whitfields left in the county now, but there's so much rich history through here with the Indian trails, with the stagecoach, with all the rural families that lived here and built these small communities and towns. And you ask one question, why are these towns so close together? And why are the county courthouses so close together? Well, you think about it, in those days, everything was horse and wagons, and you wanted to have these municipalities, these courthouses, usually within 20 or 30 miles. So that would be one day of horse and buggy travel. And all these little towns, just 3 or 4 or 5 miles apart, they grew up around little small farms. And all these little communities had cotton gins as well. So that gives you a little history about the stagecoach that came through Broughton, Georgia.
Here you're looking at a couple huge wheels that were on old tractors. You saw those back in the 20s, 30s, and even 40s. And then the piece behind the wheels, kind of hard to see, but it was a mule-drawn road scrape. That's what people would take care of their farm roads and county roads. There would have been some wheels on the front, and a team of mules or draft horses would pull it. Later on, as you can see, the wheels were taken off and converted to a tractor pull or a bulldozer pull. And you see this small chain, this is an anchor for you see that white boat up there? That's the anchor for that boat. We're laughing, right, folks? This is a drag chain that was in a rock quarry or a rock mine that would pull up stone to crush, but you can't even pick up one section. The poor boat would never hold 2 or 3 pieces of it. As we're walking through here, this is the barn to my right was built probably 1920s, 1930s, just a utilitarian barn. When we purchased this property, my wife and I, back in the early 2000s, you couldn't see any of these buildings, which we moved most of the buildings here, but what was here, you couldn't see them. They were falling down and in disrepair. We worked on saving those. And this is our little well house in front of David here. We built that out of 1820s material, except the tin. The tin's 1930s, 1940s, but you can see the old colors, the green and the blues coming through, and you saw that a lot in the early 1900s. You see a crackle paint green looking corner cabinet. Beautiful piece. This is an old mill bin. This side is rotten, but we're going to save it. We're going to put it back together. Just imagine this barn. It had actually doors on the other end as well. This old barn, all the activity that would have been here at one time. There comes our mascot, Patches the kitty. Hey, kitty, kitty. What you doing, Patches? Folks, this is our mascot. She stays with the barn. Usually when we get a good barn cat, someone wants to take them home, but we try to keep them down, to keep them around, to keep the mice away. Folks, as you can see, there's not anything specific that we buy or collect, and we really don't collect anything. However, I like old fishing equipment and old ammunition boxes. But the white cabinet there, that's an old early pie safe, and it was built, and it came from Jasper County, Georgia. Anything, I said I didn't collect anything. Anything Jasper County or Monticello, I try to save for this community, for future generations to see. But this old piece was handmade, and it's got wooden pegs in it, so has a lot of history to it. We'd love to have you guys come out and visit us. Tomorrow morning, Thursday, May the 4th, we open at 7 o'clock. We're going to be here Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, all 3 days from 7 o'clock, and somebody will be here till probably dark.
Now, what is the majority of this that you feel is going to be sold over the course of the next 3 days, and how many people are you expecting?
We sell a lot of architectural and industrial items. We sell a lot of country store items, a lot of signs. We will have a lot of weapons as well, ammunition that we will sell. And I have people coming from as far away as Louisiana, Mississippi, all over the Southeast that are staying in hotels tonight in Madison or Covington or the local areas. And we have about 30 to 40 vendors that set up, and we will actually have thousands and thousands of customers. We really have a lot of people, and we're very fortunate to have the turnout, and it looks like, thank God, we're not going to have any rain. It's going to miss us. This safe came out of a depot, or the depot that we have now here at Broughton Station. It came from Shadydale. And the next safe came out of the Mercantile, Blackwell Mercantile in Farrah, Georgia, which is about 3 miles down the road. It's between Broughton Station and and Shadydale and Kelly, but that came out of the Blackwell Mercantile, and we have the combination to both, and we can use both of them. David, on this side is a lot of, again, architectural items. We have hundreds of old doors that people buy today to use in their new home, and these old doors are just fantastic. You can't find the wood to build these out of anymore, and we literally have hundreds of them for you to choose from. And lots of these doors are the same way. They're wooden pegged, they're mortise and tenon, they have the wooden pegs in them, and they're just made out of such superior wood and quality that they will last for centuries, we hope. Here's some old shutters that came off of an 1800s Mercantile in Greensboro, off the square in Greensboro. These are hand forged hinges, everything handmade. Okay, folks, this building, it has some good history. My wife and I, we were married 13 and a half years. We sold our double wide on our first piece of property, had a little creek through it. We sold it, or agreed to sell it, in November. And just as soon as we sold it, as I said earlier, we were married 13 and a half years, didn't think we could have any children. We had talked about adopting. We find out my wife's pregnant. So then we move in with my brother for a short amount of time, and we have a piece of property in Farrah, and we built this thinking we're going to build our future house on that same piece of property. So this was the first house that my daughter moved into when she came home from the hospital. And it's just one big open room with a small laundry room and a small bathroom. But when we sold that property several years ago, my wife said, I want to keep this because that was our daughter's first house. So there again, we incorporated Adrian Bishop, and he moved it for us and brought it here to Broughton. So it's a permanent fixture at Broughton Station, and it has history for us. And another 100 years from now, maybe someone will remember that it was moved here because it was a little girl's first house. And it's on the other side of the chimney that was the 5-room hotel, and then of course you can see the back of the little white structure there that was the 1812 kitchen. This home was built in 1901, and now we use it to store, yes, antiques in. Look at the big barrel on the front porch. I don't know, it's probably well over 100 gallons. It's 2 or 3 times as large as the normal Jack Daniels wooden barrels that we see. But this is a great old home. We've saved it, had to do a little roof work on it and a little repair on the porch, but just think there again of the history and the different people that have lived here. One family in particular, they came from Ellijay, Georgia, down in the early 1960s to Shadydale, Georgia. And the Champion family, Mr. Junior Champion, Margaret Champion, they're gone now, bless their souls. They were just great people, and they lived in this house. And they told me some stories about this home and this area. So it's great to know the history of the people that have lived here and raised their families here. And there again, the road here was dirt, and the main road behind the house now wasn't even here, Highway 142. It was paved and built in the early 40s, late 30s, I believe. But of course, this home's facing the dirt road. A lot of the families that have been here for generations and generations, since the early 1800s, this area was established
from the Creek Treaty, early 1800s. And the families that were in this area are the Pitts, the Jones family, Blackwells, Jordans, Wyatts. So there's just so much rich history in this area. Broughton Station is just a small part of it, but we thank y'all for coming and listening to us today. We wish you would come and see us in person. I've always got a big straw hat on. I welcome you to Broughton Station, and you guys have a great day. Thanks so much for your time.
Hmm.